So in the previous class, we discussed the sorting materials into group. In that, we studied that by considering the same material, the objects are, by using same material, the different objects are made by with the same material. And also we prepared another chart whereas the object was same, but that object is made of different materials. Example, what we have taken, the toys, right? Toy is an object, but toy can be made up of different materials. What are those different materials? Maybe made up of wood or plastic, okay? So, or any cloth or any articles like metals, okay? And even table, if we consider the table is object, but it can be made by using wood and also metal. Okay? So like this, we made two different tables. In those two different tables, one table explains or it gives us the information that the single object can be made by a different materials. And another table we come to know that with the same single material, it is used to prepare a different objects, to make different objects. So here, and today we are going to discuss that why we need this differentiation, why we need to make into a group, right? What is the purpose? Okay, so just one simple example here. Why we are keeping, for example, we have our textbooks one side, our notebook one side, and different box one side, bottle one side. Why we are making in different? What is the purpose there? Purpose is what? It should be in a systematic order. Once it is systematic order, so books and notebook, they should not get mixed and the paper should not tear one another while picking up one textbook, all textbooks should not. So on that way, we are making in that order. And even if you go to the library, there also will come to know that they are sort out in the textbooks where the science one side, literature one side, and comedies like that. They are going to make a separate. This is because the reason behind this is why we need to make a group. One, to get a better information about the things, and it is easy to study, and okay, it is about, and in our home every day, if we come to know that grains also we are getting in separate, grains are separate, vegetables are separate, fruits are separate. Why we are making that different? So that while eating fruit should not mix with vegetable. If any of the vegetable get spoiled, it should not spoil other. Okay. On this way, like this all what we used to say that sort of grouping is important. Okay, we need to make the materials into groups. Okay, then if we come around by observing our surrounding objects, they will come to know that some are made up of metal, some are made up of wood, right? And some are made up of some fabrics and plastics, right? So here, how do we come to know that these are made up of plastic and these are made up of material? So it is when we are going to understand, when we are going to understand the properties of those materials. Once we come to know that the properties of materials, it is easy to make them into a group. Then what are those properties? So properties of materials. Properties of material. Okay. So what are those properties? Yes, every day we are saying some of the object they shines, some of object they are not shiny object, right? So here one of the properties for shining. Have you observed that shining objects? right? What are those shining objects? Some of them, usually if you go in your home only, if you take any wire, in that you come to know that inside copper metal wire will be there, and copper, and if you come to that iron. But here, remember children, some objects, some materials are there, they are shiny during when they are freshly cut. Okay, that time only it is possible to they are going to show their shiny property. When they are freshly cut, which surface is freshly cut, that surface becomes very shiny. That surface will be very shiny. But however, when they are exposed to air and water, that is what we used to say, right? That moist air. Let's say that iron will get one of the layer, that reddish brown layer is going to form on the surface of that iron particles. Then what is that reddish brown or dark reddish, that layer, and later that layer is going to break that, the damage, it is going to damage that article, iron article. That is what we used to say, that rusting. Okay, rusting is what? It is the process when that iron articles exposed to air and moisture, are exposed to air or moisture. Okay, so that time what happens? Those materials are going to become dull. The shiny property is going to lose. Then almost all metals, we use that metals, almost all metals like iron, copper, aluminium, right? These are what? Metals, and these are have the luster property. That luster means shiny. One more physics, that in science word we use that luster. In chemistry, right? We are using word luster. Luster means what? It shows shiny property. And here these metals are shiny when they freshly cut. That surface, which surface shows the shiny? When that freshly cut surface. And if once it exposed to air, that time it becomes dull. So here the properties of matter, the first property, that is luster. Okay, told you what is that luster? Luster is what? Luster or shiny. Okay. Yes. Can you write your example here? Luster, or you can say that shine. What all the almost all metals. You can write your examples. What are those examples? Especially gold. Right? Gold is what? It shows the luster. Gold and copper, aluminium. Okay? So etc. These are what they shows that when the surface, when it is freshly cut, that surface shows the luster property. Luster means what? Shiny. So here it is also one of the property of that material. Okay. Then when they lose their shiny property, when they expose to air or moisture, right? So here, when these metals exposed to air and moisture, they becomes dull. the surface is going to become dull. Again, if you cut it any of the surface, that cutted surface will show the shining property. So here one of the property of these metals are what? They shows luster when they freshly cut surface, and they becomes dull when they exposed to air or moisture. Okay. So this is what about appearance. Which property it is? The property is appearance. Okay. The appearance means how it shows, how it looks. Appearance means what that physical appearance, that is what is that appearance, how they are looking. So here luster is one of the property of that materials. Almost all metals have the property of luster. The next appearance, the next property is hardness or softness. Right? We had seen that in our surrounding, take some of the objects, just make it to press, push up or compress it. Right? Okay. See here, I am going to compress this board. Is it possible? Is it changing its position? How much I put the pressure? Does it change? No, because it is hard. Right? And here, I am compressing here, duster. Is it? No. But here, this sponge, if I compress, it is going to. So then, what are the reasons behind this? Why this material compresses? Why not this material? Right? So, like the reason is what? The hardness and softness. Some objects are there, they are soft in nature, and some objects they are very hard. Okay, you can consider here wood. Okay, if you go on compress, does it compress? No. And take cotton. Okay, take a cotton or sponge. Then if you compress it, it becomes compresses. And if you leave it, then again it remains the position. So there, here that hardness and softness. Why they are hard? Why they are soft? Because their properties. The atoms, later in higher class you will come to know that their arrangement of those atoms becomes the object hard and soft. Okay. So here hardness and softness is the another property of these materials. Hardness and softness. Hardness and softness is what? Which are difficult to compress, called hard. Okay. Substance or objects, which is materials. We are talking about materials. You consider materials. Materials which are difficult to compress. Materials which are difficult to compress are called hard. Materials which are difficult to compress are called hard. Materials which are easy to compress. The materials which compressed easily are called soft. So first we will write here materials, hard materials. Can you give example here? Yes, take on wood, right? And all metals also hard. Okay. Some exception metals are there. Those are soft. But almost all metals are hard. So wood, metal, and again stone, etc. You can mention other hard materials also. Okay. Then what is soft? Materials which can be compressed easily. Which can be compressed easily. the objects which can compress easily, that object, that material is what we used to say that soft material. Okay, example for soft materials, so we take cotton, right, and sponge. Okay, so here these materials. And another appearance is also there, roughness and smooth. We had seen that objects, right? Some object surface will be very rough and some object surface will be very soft, like slippery, right? So here then that also comes on the basis of their touch, okay? The hardness and softness, and their surface also smooth and rough. Smooth and rough. If you come to know that stone, okay, and even you know that some different stones are so there. Some stone surfaces are very soft. You would have seen that in ocean or in sea. Okay, the seashore will find that small white color stones also. Their surfaces are not much hard, roughness. Okay, the smooth as well as rough. Okay, if you come to know that with the wood, or when we are going to make it softer, then it becomes that surface thick. We are going to polish. Then to get that smooth surface, sometimes we are going to make a sandpaper. With the help of sandpaper, we are going to rubbing those materials, right? So that then roughness will become smooth, okay, surface, and the even tiles also sometimes are very soft. If you come to know that line, like this, these substances, then which surfaces are smooth, which surfaces are rough, that also property of the material. So that on that basis also that can be made into a group. The next property is soluble and insoluble. So two properties we studied. One is the luster property, then next hard and soft, smooth and rough. Okay, next we are going to move with that soluble and insoluble. So have you heard this word soluble and insoluble? Yes, very heard. Soluble means what? The substance which is going to dissolve into the solvent. For example, if you take a sugar, right, and water. Sugar and water. What you are going to do? You are going to put that sugar crystal into water. Then what you are going to observe? It is going to dissolve into that water. You will find that when again if you are stirring, then all sugar will going to mix with that water. But if you put a sand into that water, what you are going to observe? That sand particles are going to settle at the bottom of that container. So what it means? But sugar, we didn't see that sugar crystal which is settled down in the glass. No, right? But sand, almost all sand particles which settle. Only you can observe that color, right? It shows that which sand. If you red sand put into the glass, the water will become somewhat muddy, right? Brown color. If you take white color sand, okay, then we will observe that whatever if that any mud is there, it will catch in that color, or remaining it is going to settle. So here the soluble and insoluble. Soluble and insoluble. Okay, the substance, when we are going to say that soluble, substance have completely disappeared or dissolved in water. Okay, substances completely disappears. Substance completely disappears, or we can say that dissolve. That is what we used to say, that substance completely disappear or dissolve in soluble substance. Okay. For examples, the salt in water, sugar in water, right? Okay, salt and sugar in water, right? And again, what we can take? Take the example, sugar in water, okay? Water and lemon juice, etc. You can take those all are soluble. Okay, they are going to mix with that, make into water. Completely disappears. The sugar, can you observe when you put the sugar into the water? Can you observe the sugar and water differently? No. So such type of substance we used to say that soluble. And insoluble are what? Substance. They are do not mix with water and do not disappear. Substances do not mix with water or do not disappear. Do not disappear. Right? So what are those insoluble substances? What are those insoluble substances? Those are the substances do not mix with water and do not disappear are called insoluble. Insoluble. You can say that sand into the water. It is not going to dissolve in water. Sand remains insoluble substances. Okay. And someone, if you take a pen or key, okay, and take some leaves, what you are going to observe there? Take a cup of glass or any pond, okay, bowl, put water and keep objects like leaf and some small wooden powder, chalk powder, and in another just put some keys or any some toys and stone. What you are going to observe? You are going to observe some objects floats on the surface of water and some objects they are going to soak into that water. Okay, they are going to sink. Some are floats and some are sink into the water. Why they are? Some are because the property what we used to say that density. If the higher density objects compared to water, you know that the two objects are there. One is water, another is leaf. So here the density of leaf is lesser than the density of water, so it floats on the water, and the remaining stone and all those are heavier than the density of water. That's why they are going to dip. They are going to sink into the water. On this basis also, the which substance can have the property of floating and the substance or materials which are going to sink into the water. On that basis also, the materials are going to make into group. So these all information, these all properties tells us the proper objects, how we can make them into the separate group. So that it is easy to understand their properties and where we can use such materials. That information is very important. So without knowing the properties of those materials, how we can use those objects or materials? Once we know, I told you, if I know that cloth material, I have that cloth material, but I want to make it a glass, and I make it with the help of that glass, and I want to store water or I want to put water. Is it possible? No. That cloth will not hold the water. What it will do? It will get leak. Right? That's the reason this is the example. So here, this to understand these properties proper usage, we need such properties. So that we use those material for a proper usage. Okay, we can use it in a proper way where they are necessary. Yes, understood here? Okay. Next is floating and sink. I told you, heavy objects, sinks, and light objects, the which density is less. Density, how we are going to calculate? It is mass per volume. Okay. So on that basis, we are going to classify the object. Then any other properties are there? Only these many are there? No. Still some more properties are there. What are those? Some objects are transparent. Some objects are transparent and some objects are opaque and some objects are translucent. So we had seen that in the previous when we were discussing about the food, alright, or the next components of food. That time we come to know that if any of the paper there is oil patches, in any of the paper oil patches, if you want to see that whether light passes through it properly, can you see any objects? Right? No. We can, it is transparent, but how much transparent it is, that object is not possible to see clearly. Right? So that such type of objects we used to say that translucent. Okay? So here transparency. Transparent. Transparent. Transparency, then translucent, then another one is translucent. Translucent and opaque. Okay, transparency, translucent and opaque. So here the transparency. So when some glass materials, okay, some glass materials, they allow the light to pass through them. We can see the objects clearly, which is next to that sheet. Okay, if you have any glass sheet, if you are going to observe, the behind that glass sheet also is possible to see. So that this type of objects allow the light to pass through them. Translucent is what? Translucent objects, they are going to allow the light, but the objects are going to visible in a dim. Okay, not clearly visible. For example, oil patch on paper and tissue papers, they are going to allow light, but not clearly. The complete transparency is not there. Then opaque. Okay, so you just when you all have tried and explained, just take a torch and hold your palm. So how you are going, what you are going to observe? Whether your palm allowed to pass through that light? No. Now this your palm becomes opaque. Okay, so these objects doesn't allow light to pass through them. They are going to hold them. Such objects what we used to say that opaque. So here you can take the transparency. Example for transparency: glass, water, air. Example for transparency of what? Water, glass, and air. What about the translucent? You are not able to see, right? It is not possible to see any object, not clearly, right? Materials object can be seen with not clear. So we can say that oil patch, paper, oil patched paper, tissue. Okay, and some glass materials also there. We have seen that some glass materials that are also polygon box. Right? These are some examples for empire. So here, with the help of all these properties, we are going to group it. We are going to sorting the material into different groups.